I needed to get out of there. It was not appropriate for me to be there any longer.
What do you think would happen to me if I was in a meeting with my boss and I walked out while he was talking?
I think it's better for me to excuse myself and not continue to be disruptive than to stay there. And it was a way for me to calm down and get away from the situation.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll congratulate you on offering the apology. I think that's appropriate. However, it sounds as though you still believe that you can tell citizens who come to your public comment portion of your meeting what they can say and how they can say it. Is that true?
I don't believe that that's true. What we're saying is that if we have an issue on the table, we need to hear from you about that because we need to gather as much information as possible before we make a decision. But we have folks coming back to us and saying, you didn't have all the information. You need to listen to this. You need to see this. They're bringing props and they're bringing maps.
What's wrong with that?
Signs.
But if that illustrates the problem, what's wrong with that? Congressmen do that all day long. Watch C-SPAN sometime.
It's not what we want to have happen.
No, but ma'am, here we're getting to the crux of it. You have said that you open up this time to let citizens come and talk to you, and then you say, but we want you to talk to us in a certain way. You can't bring a picture. You can't bring a chart. You can't say certain words. You can't mention the names of city council members, especially if a citizen wants to call out one council member either for high praise or for some kind of offense. And you're saying, and we will tell you what you can speak about and how you may speak about it. I think that's, number one, unconstitutional, and number two, it flies in the face of saying we want the public to communicate to us, but we will only listen on certain subjects and only if you say it in certain ways.
Well, you're not characterizing it correctly, and that's very unfortunate.
Well, how should I characterize your attempt to limit free speech in a city council chamber?
And you take one situation out of context.
No, I'm taking them all. Let's assume that the thing last night is behind us a million light years. We're going forward now. Somebody wants to come to the Vancouver City Council tonight. They may be listening to this discussion thinking, this woman needs a piece of my mind. I'm half tempted as a Vancouver resident to come to your next city council meeting and give you 5 minutes or whatever the time limit is on the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and the limits it puts on government members like you. And I would single you out by name, and the minute you took me to task for bringing up your name, I would say the Constitution says you have no right to limit my speech. And I would say to you, Ms. Harris, tell me where in the Constitution you have the right to limit the way a city, a resident, a citizen addresses government, because that Constitution also says you have the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. And the Constitution didn't say, but you can only talk to your government about the things that the government puts on the agenda, and you can only address them in the manner in which they deign to be addressed. That's the way you're coming off, is that you've apologized because now you are being hung up to dry. I've already sent the YouTube off to O'Reilly, and I hope he runs it on television, because you've behaved in a way toward your employers in a way that I think most people would get fired for behaving that way toward their bosses. And now today you're saying, well, I'm sorry I did it last night because I got caught, but you're not planning to change your tune in the future.
Lars, that's not true, and I'm sorry that you're...
Well, are you going to change the way that you let citizens address you in the future? Will you let them address you by name? Will you let them bring up any subject they want to bring up that they think is relevant to the city?
The decision will be made by City Council and the mayor as to how we will conduct.
No, I'm asking your opinion. Will if the mayor asks you, if it is put to a vote, the council will let individual council members be addressed by name, and citizens may address whatever issue they think is relevant to the city council. Will you vote in favor of allowing citizens to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go one step further. We're making progress. I appreciate that, Ms. Harris. It sounds like we're getting there. Will you propose to the Vancouver City Council that they change their own rules to say that during the public comment period, citizens may bring up any matter which they believe is relevant to the City Council, and they may in fact address City Council members by name?
Those are conversations that we'll be having at City Council, and we'll talk about that.
Why wouldn't you just say you'll propose it? Because you can propose it, and if the other four voted down, then, that's the way it works.
We'll talk about it. I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Well, I have to give you points. You've come a long way.
Gee, thanks, Lars.
Well, look, I still can't get Levitt to fire that stupid city forester, and he could save $50,000 by doing $50 or $60,000 by doing that. You could hire another cop.
Yeah, it's just too bad you can't change your approach because you're
Ma'am, you know what happens when I change my approach? If I acted like,
listen to you anymore.
well, that's part of it. But listen, I do this because, do you know what, Ms. Harris? I'm passionate. If I don't feel passionately about something, my producers don't even put it in front of me. And if I bring something up and say, well, we could talk about this, but I don't feel, I don't bring it up. And when I'm passionate about something, I don't back down because I've watched too many interviews with idiot journalists. And I used to be a no-opinion journalist because that was my job, to keep my opinion out of it. And people didn't know what my political position was. Half of them thought I was a liberal, half I thought I was a Republican or a conservative. I kept my opinion out of my stories because that was my job. But now I see reporters who will ask a question like, ma'am, why did you do that? And you say, well, I'm sorry, and it was an unfortunate occurrence. But I feel as though you've really ducked the central question here, but I wanted to make the point so that people listening will hear that you have never really addressed the constitutional issue here. Ma'am, I believe in the Constitution. The Constitution is a list of things that government can't do. It's kind of like when the parents leave for the weekend and they leave the teenage kids in charge of the household, and they're old enough to be left by themselves, and they said, here's the list of things you can't do. Okay, it's not a list of things you can do. It's a list of things you can't do. You can't have a party. You can't have your friends over. Your boyfriend can't spend the night. You can't drink the liquor. Those are lists. Now, the Constitution is a list of things government can't do. One of them is government cannot infringe on the right of citizens to seek redress of their grievances. The government cannot infringe on the public speech rights of citizens. And I believe that when you say we have a government that spends hundreds of millions of dollars of your money that is taken at the point of a gun, and if you want to come and talk to us about how we're spending that money or the decisions we're making that affect your life, you may only speak about the things that we tell you can speak about, and you have to do it in a certain way and address the council in a certain way. I think that's on its face unconstitutional. And I haven't yet heard you tell me why you think that is allowed under the Constitution.
What I encourage you to do is contact the city manager's office and get our guidelines. And then,
ma'am, but I'm asking you, in your heart of hearts, I don't want to talk to the city manager or your lawyer or 15 other people. I want to know, do you think you know the Constitution?
No.
You don't? Do you think as a city government official you should know the Constitution?
What I need to know is the charter of my city.
No, hold on. Do you think that before you get to the charter of your city, you have to obey the U.S. Constitution? Do you think that's true?
You're right, Lars. And I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. Do you plan to educate yourself about the Constitution since you just admitted you don't know the Constitution? Thank you, Lars. I really appreciate this time with you.
Thank you very much. I guess that's a no. Back in just a moment. You're listening to The Lars Larson Show.